U.S. cattle herds may be on the rise while canned produce takes a giant hit.
Plus, we've got the latest on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration cuts, which are shaking up ag forecasting, and a wild roundup of America's wildest July 4th eating contests beyond just hot dogs.
You better listen in for this full plate of ag news, beef market shifts, and competitive eating feats you didn't even know existed. I'm Braeden.
And I'm Savannah.
Welcome to Magnetic Ag Ears Edition.
Every week, we break down the top headlines and trends facing food and agriculture.
Fast, fun, and actually useful. Let's get it. Could the U.S. cattle herd rebuilding phase finally be underway? Some fresh data and producer reports suggest it might just be that way.
Here's what we're seeing. April numbers showed the biggest drop in heifers in feedlots in 5 years, and improved forage conditions are letting ranchers keep more females at home. That's a classic signal herd expansion is beginning.
Oklahoma State's Daryl Peel says feedlot placements were down 4.4% in the first half of 2025, largely because fewer heifers are being sent to feed. That means tighter cattle supplies ahead and continued squeeze on beef production for the rest of the year.
Prices tell the story too. Oklahoma auctions saw 500-pound steer calves and 800-pound yearling calf prices jump around 18% in the first half of the year, while fed cattle prices jumped 20% before peaking in mid-June.
But don't expect these prices to skyrocket endlessly. Markets cooled slightly at the end of June as feeder and fed cattle markets pulled back from record highs, partly due to global geopolitical tensions. In Savannah, analysts expect more sideways movement through the summer heat.
Still, beef production is dropping. After a stable 2024, total beef production was down 4.3% year over year, driven by a 5.8% drop in fed steers and heifer slaughter. Non-fed production is down nearly 9% year to date.
And choice box beef cutout values also tell the tale, up over 25% since March. With strong consumer demand and limited supply, prices are really holding firm.
Bottom line, if cow-calf producers keep more heifers back for breeding, supplies will tighten even more into 2026. That means continued support for cattle prices. Good news for farmers, though. Tighter supplies could ripple down into the entire beef supply chain.
We'll keep watching USDA's late July cattle inventory reports for confirmation. For now, it looks like herd rebuilding is starting to rumble back to life.
Braeden, our next story is taking us from the beef supply chain into the vegetable can supply chain.
Savannah, an iconic grocery staple, is in trouble. Del Monte Foods, the 139-year-old canned fruit and veggie giant, just filed for bankruptcy and is seeking a new buyer.
CEO Greg Longstreet says a sale is the best way to turn things around, calling it, quote, the most effective way to accelerate our turnaround and create a stronger and enduring Del Monte Foods.
We really should unpack what's happening here. Consumers are shifting away from canned goods, leaning into fresh produce and private label options to stretch their grocery budgets. On top of that, tariffs on steel and aluminum have squeezed margins for canned food companies like Del Monte.
Demand keeps slipping, but their fixed costs haven't. Del Monte's been closing plants and warehouses over the past 2 years, including a fruit processing plant in Washington just last month. Their portfolio isn't smaller either, spanning canned fruits and vegetables, boba tea, tomato products, and college inn broths.
And another big weight on their shoulders is debt. Bloomberg reports Del Monte's interest payments now exceed their earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. That's a recipe for financial stress, no matter how recognizable your brand may be.
The company secured $912.5 million in new financing to keep operations running during the sale process, despite estimating liabilities between $1 billion and $10 billion. And with as many as 25,000 creditors, bankruptcy court proceedings could get complex.
For now, Savannah, Del Monte says grocery shelves won't be affected, but the bankruptcy reflects broader food industry trends. Shoppers are spending more carefully, and even major CPG players like PepsiCo, Post Holdings, ConAgra, and Smuckers have announced job cuts and closures just this year.
The canned food fruit aisle may look timeless, but it's not immune to today's economic pressure. Del Monte's next chapter will depend on finding a buyer who sees potential in reinvesting this legacy brand in a shifting consumer landscape.
Savannah, climate programs are forecasting cloud to blackout conditions. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration 2026 federal budget aims to downsize climate research by eliminating funding for virtually all of its climate-related programs.
According to the new fiscal 2026 budget documents, they are cutting climate, weather, and oceanic laboratories, cooperative institutes, and competitive climate research grants, as well as Sea Grant collegiate programs, aquaculture research, and National Oceanographic Partnership programs. NOAA says it's streamlining program management and refocusing on short-term weather forecasting, specifically under the National Weather Service.
And what could this really mean for agriculture? Well, farmers depend on seasonal outlooks, oceanic pattern research, and regional climate models to make planting, irrigation, and harvest decisions. These NOAA programs often provide early warnings on droughts, help model El Nino and La Nina impacts, and offer data to mitigate flooding and storm damage, especially vital in coastal and drought-prone agricultural zones.
Environmental scientists are sounding the alarms, saying this cut undermines U.S. leadership in climate science. Farm and conservation groups are watching closely. While not all have issued statements, several have noted that this could impact crop insurance modeling, disaster prep, and yield forecasting.
For those who rely on Mother Nature, these aren't fringe programs. They're the boots-on-the-ground science teams many ag communities rely on. Short-term forecasts, like your iPhone's weather app, are helpful, but long-term planning, like soil moisture trends, drought cycles, and temperature shift, require deeper data.
From weather forecasting to workforce forecasting, let's shift from the skies over our farms to the picket lines on the ground.
We've got an update on a story we covered just last week. Remember the looming strike at Tyson Foods' Amarillo beef plant? Well, the workers have secured a major win.
That's right. After tension negotiations and a credible strike threat, Teamsters Local 577 members ratified a new 4-year contract. The deal delivers a 32% wage increase, expanded paid time off, and stronger retirement benefits. Huge gains for workers at one of the largest beef plants in the country.
Union leaders have gone on to call it a hard-fought victory. Al Brito, president of Local 577, said it shows what Texas Teamsters are all about, quote, coming together to fight for a better life for their families. Jesse Case, with the Teamsters Food Processing Division, added that anyone working one of the nation's most dangerous industries should be able to support their family and retire with dignity.
Tyson hasn't issued a formal statement yet, but Teamsters members Connie Hernandez summarized it by saying, quote, "We're the top plant here. We finally got the contract we deserve, and that makes me proud to be a Teamster."
While Amarillo workers are celebrating, experts say systemic challenges remain across meatpacking, from fast line speeds to limited regulatory oversight. For workers in similar plants without union backing, progress is going to be even slower.
Still, this win signals growth labor momentum in food processing, a sector historically hard to unionize. With workforce shortages, rising costs, and rising demands, labor organizations could reshape how the industry compensates the protected workers.
Savannah, the bottom line here is that Tyson Amarillo workers have kind of set a new bar, which means we're going to get to keep track of how these ripple effects play out beyond Texas and into the greater industry.
While I had Tyson steak sandwiches on my 4th of July barbecue menu, foodies ate their way through many other categories.
The 4th of July isn't just fireworks, cookouts, and country music, although Spotify numbers would disagree. It's also about witnessing people eat mind-boggling amounts of food in record time.
Headlining the food frenzy this year, Joey Chestnut reclaimed his crown as Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest after skipping last year due to a contract dispute. The king is back, scarfing down 70 and a half hot dog and buns in 10 minutes. That's not quite his record of 76, but still close enough to clinch his 17th win in 20 appearances.
Chestnut told fans, quote, "I wish I ate a couple more. Sorry, guys, I'll be back next year," end quote. The man sounds like he just missed par on the back nine instead of missing half of a hot dog.
And don't sleep on the women's division. Miki Sudo took home the 11th title with 33 hot dogs. She holds the women's record for 50. She walked away a little disappointed, saying the buns felt bigger this year.
Savannah, hot dogs aren't the only food getting competitive on Independence Day. Across the country, eating contests push the limits in truly bizarre ways. Here are some examples. In Florida, the Key West Key Lime Pie Eating Championship challenges contestants to devour entire pie, face only, no hands allowed. In Texas, the annual Watermelon Thump pits eaters against massive melons, with the current record of 11 pounds of watermelon flesh in just under 15 minutes. Over in Louisiana, oyster eating contests see competitors slurp down hundreds of Gulf oysters in minutes. The reigning champion downed 468, you heard me right, oysters in 8 minutes. Talk about briny bragging rights. And in Wisconsin, the Great Ice Cream Eating Contest turns out winners who can polish off more than a gallon of frozen custard without even getting a brain freeze.
Whether it's hot dogs, pies, or oysters, eating contests tap into something deeply American, turning everyday foods into feasts of human endurance and competitive glory.
And let's be honest, it makes for great TV between all the baseball games and fireworks shows. But across the US, July 4th remains the Super Bowl of competitive eating competitions.
Stay tuned next year for what new records and questionable digestive decisions are on the menu.
Savannah, this episode made me want a hot dog real bad.
Well, Braeden, this episode made me want to dive into our twice weekly newsletter. Tune in next week for more ag headlines you didn't know you needed.
Hungry for more?
Subscribe to our twice weekly newsletter for more industry news right in your inbox.
Or follow along on socials at magnetic.ag for more trends and headlines.
Thanks for listening to Magnetic Ag Ears Edition.